Hey, everybody, we'll be starting the show in about 20 seconds. But as always, we appreciate it if you comment below the live stream. We'll put your comments on screen so you can interact with us. We got a great show today. We're talking with the great Steve Gillespie, Minnesota-based comic, or he was a Minnesota comic. Now he lives in Colorado, and he's bringing a really cool show to the area called the Dose Psychedelic Comedy Show, which Maggie is going to be talking about with him today. So we'll start very shortly.
Hello. Welcome to Minds on Mushrooms, where we're unveiling the magic behind psychedelics for mental health and addiction. I am your host, Maggie Kirkwood, and I am so stoked. Today, my guest is comedian Steve Gillespie, and he is here. Well, we're here to talk about it's called The Dose, which is a psychedelic comedy show. And we're going to hear all about it, ideas behind it, and where they're touring and all that jazz. So welcome, Steve.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello, Maggie. Oh, there I am. Hi.
You're there.
Yeah, I made it.
You are in Denver, Colorado right now.
That's correct. That's correct.
How's the weather? I feel like it's crazy everywhere.
It's been really nice. The last couple of weeks we've been in about the 60s. So it's been great. Yeah, it's been really nice. We had a cold snap when everyone else had it, and then since then it's been very nice. I've been getting outside a lot.
Well, lucky you for some stability there.
I have this. This is a wood burning stove right here, so that's like the one thing that's cool about.
Oh, wow, that is super sweet. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's an old house, so it doesn't have very good insulation, so that's handy, very handy.
Well, good, and thank you so much for joining. This is just pretty huge for me because I've been checking out some of your work, and I saw you were on Conan and Amazon Prime. How long have you been doing your gig?
I've been stand up for about 18 years now, and full time for like 15. So I've been just basically touring around nonstop for the last almost 15 years.
Wow.
So I like Gabe's got a little
you got a little problem
little animation going. I love it.
Stove you're bragging about.
So I've been doing it for quite a long time, and I've done a few TV things and just keep kind of making albums and grinding away at it and coming up with different projects and things to work on. So
can I toot his horn, Maggie? Since whatever. Yeah. So Steve is one of the best comic. He's like a comics comic, if you like actual not cornball shit. I think you'll like his comedy. He's one of my favorites around, and it's adult content, obviously, because we're adults. And but yeah, no, absolutely one of my favorites personally, and I've been around it my whole life. So yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Gabe, because I have a lot of respect for Gabe as a comic as well, and I think that's kind of true to form in Minneapolis, especially when we were coming up, where we were focused on talking about some real things, heavy things, and kind of been sticking true to that, at least trying to.
Oh, I love that. That's so great. Let's talk a little bit about, so you consider yourself a connoisseur of psychedelics, is that correct?
Yeah, I guess. I've described myself. Yeah.
That's what I was reading.
Yeah. So I have a fair amount of experience, probably over the last 15 years or right around there. I've been
I love that you're talking about
using that
amount of experience. Put in 15 years, pretty heavy drug use.
Yeah.
Steve is the one who introduced me to DMT, by the way. So I got to give him that.
Let's remember it's medicine.
It's medicine.
Yeah.
So it can be, yeah.
Well, I want to hear, did you, my story is psychedelics completely changed my life and helped me with my battle with depression and alcohol. And is there anything, have you had any kind of eye-opening or life kind of changing experiences with psychedelics, or talk
Yes.
to me about that.
Yeah, I definitely have. I'm not sure it's like this specific thing happened at this specific time. It's been more of kind of a slow burn, I would say, of it kind of started when I was younger and I was on antidepressants and things like that for depression, and not really understanding that whole world and not really understanding what I was getting into, and having a lot of being naive and kind of looking for a quick fix, and just not, mental health not really being something that was talked about a lot in my family when I was growing up, and just kind of shoved under the rug, and take a pill, you'll be fine, that whole thing. And then when I started, they put me on Ritalin when I was a young kid. I was like 9 or 10 when they put me on Ritalin, and just all kinds of things that I think really what the actual problem was anxiety. And then that anxiety pretty much being untreated and diagnosed and not really acknowledged or understanding it, that kind of turned into depression. And then just not really having much of a sense of who I was and what this was as far as existence is concerned. And that kind of all flipped on its head when I started to use psychedelics on a more regular basis, and then in heavier trips. Those things really started. I got off antidepressants and SSRIs. That was probably the big thing that happened. Was I was on Zoloft and citalopram and SSRIs for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And you can't really get off that stuff full turkey, but it slowly was able to get myself off that stuff and really get on a healthier path as far as my mental health was concerned. And I'm not saying that psychedelics is all of it, but I think it put the groundwork. It changed the way that I was identifying with my egoic mind. And I don't even think I really even recognized that until maybe a good 5, 6, 7 years into doing psychedelics. But I think that's kind of been the process.
Gotcha.
I think with psychedelics, what's happening is that it is kind of taking you out of the process of in the structure of your mind that your mind has built around your own personality, your own ego, and it takes you out of that. Some people try to call it an ego death. I'm not so sure it's that, but it at least gives you space between what that is and who you actually are. And I think that's really key when it's coming to mental health or dealing with trauma.
So true.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
And just to back up, I think, I get a lot of questions from people who are currently taking SSRIs or antidepressants. And, they want to ask me, well, how should I wean, or how should I, and obviously I have zero answers, not being a doctor or anything, but would you be maybe open kind of talking about that process for you and what it looked like? And just if there's anyone listening because it's honestly asked so often, and I think people are actually scared to ask their doctors in some cases.
Yeah.
I mean, they should. But
I mean, definitely, as far as I know, and as far as my own experiences, which is really all I can tell
only you.
Is that, trying to go off cold turkey on that stuff was painful and difficult, and I'm thinking in a lot of cases unhealthy. So that, it just kind of became, I didn't really even, I kind of had a distrust with doctors as far as when it comes to meds and just the whole, big pharma, all that. And so I kind of just did it on my own, did my own research, but just figured out how to slowly wean myself off of it and try to lessen those side effects of the withdrawals, basically. And so I was getting a lot of like brain zaps. I don't know if you've ever heard anything like that. But that's one of the common things that people have when they stop taking their SSRIs. It's like this kind of electrical shock feeling that you have when you if you move a certain way, or sometimes you're not even moving. Sometimes you just get these weird electrical brain shocks that go through your body. It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, that would be.
So
sort of scary. I mean, I guess good for you for, figuring it out for what worked for you. But I mean, that takes a lot of courage to, realize that you might want something and not know the safest or, easiest way to get to it. So,
and I mean, at the time of that in my life too, it was a pretty reckless stretch of my life. So I mean, that's when I was first starting to get into psychedelics. I would say that I was pretty reckless with it, and kind of really not looking at it as like a mental health sort of thing, and more looking at it like I was trying to basically just enhance the sensual pleasures of I was trying to get high.
right.
And I kind of, that evolved. And as I got deeper and deeper into it and kind of battling my own mind, structures of my mind, coming into contact with some more spiritual entities, beings, whatever you want to call it, that kind of started to really flip my perspective on what this stuff was and what it could be used for.
Love it.
And
I love hearing about that.
Became much more spiritually inclined. So it's been quite a journey, really.
That sounds so wonderful and pretty. I have a similar story to tell. So it's special to hear it from other people, and make me feel a little bit more grounded. Maybe like, oh, I'm not just tripping out, because it's so many special things and experiences, and the whole spiritual realm too. I've never been that type of person or believer, and now I am. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know it's not super fun, but maybe we could get more fun and funny. I want to hear about your ideas behind the dose and kind of creating this experience for people. How did that all start?
Yeah, I have been for a while. I've been wanting to combine the worlds of comedy and psychedelics, because there are. I mean, let's just face it. There are people who are going out to party. They're going out to clubs. They're going out to festivals. People are using psychedelics in a social setting. It's happening. It's not going to stop. So I have been doing comedy more and more in festival settings where people are on psychedelics. And then I started to experiment with myself, doing psychedelics while I perform, and I was having a blast. And I was really enjoying the connections that were happening. I felt like a deeper connection with the audience. There was just a lot there to explore. And just made me excited to try to facilitate a space where comics and the audience feel safe to experiment if they so choose. Like, we don't provide anything for anybody. There's no selling of anything going on, but we are bringing comedy to spaces where people are already doing psychedelics, and that's kind of how we're pitching it. And that's what the show is. So yeah, we just started doing it. We just put it together, and we've done a few of them, and they've been really popular and fun. And it's a different kind of show. That's really all I can say. You kind of gotta come see it for yourself. It's not, I think some people who maybe aren't as experienced with psychedelics think that it's like this whole wild, crazy, everyone's really fucked up sort of vibe, and that's not really the case. It's people are definitely in an expanded conscious state, but people are respectful of each other, and we all kind of know that we're in this together, and it's up to us to set the vibe. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. Do you have any like visual, meaning like graphics going, or is it mainly just comedy based? And
we build the room. We set up the room to be kind of a definitely a trippier vibe. The one we do in Denver is at an art gallery / rave space where they have all of the lasers and all this stuff, and they have beautiful art all around the space, and that's really cool. And And we're working on it too. We're building a more, getting things more put together where we can travel with a set that we can bring in to pretty much anywhere we go. So lights and backdrops and all that. And then we do have a DJ as well. We have a house DJ that plays leading up to the show, and then she, usually it's a she, but she's not gonna be able to make it to the Minneapolis one, so we have a fill-in. But he's gonna be, in this case, he'll be on stage as well, doing a little bit of interacting with the comics in the crowd. And then we have the DJ play after the show as well.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it's very fun.
How many people do you usually expect? Just curious. Are there?
Yeah, I mean, we've been getting we try to keep it right around 100.
Cool.
We think that that's a good number for us to be able to kind of keep things in balance as far as, what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
We feel like if it gets too much, we're just not really ready for that quite yet, but we'll see. But yeah, that's where we're trying to keep it right around 100 people.
I'm so excited for that. So you guys are coming. You have a show out in Seattle, I believe. It's February 22nd, maybe?
Yep. Yeah, we're in February 22nd in Seattle at the Crocodile. It's like a bigger venue. They have a few different venues within the Crocodile, and the one that we're performing in is called Hereafter. That's on February 22nd. Shows at 9:00. We have a great lineup already set for that. We have some huge comics coming in. We got Bo Johnson, and we have Josh Johnson, who's been on The Daily Show. Bo Johnson's been all over TV. We have Andrew Rivers, who's Christopher Titus's opener, and we have Alyssa Yeoman. She's super funny. So we're really pumped for that show. We already sold quite a few tickets. And yeah, then we are in Minneapolis on March 9th at Sisyphus. We have some of the best comics in Minneapolis coming to do the show. I'm very excited. We got Mike Lester. We have Gabe's going to do a set.
Oh.
We have, God, I can't remember everybody. Ebenezer, he's coming down. We have Ryan Call and what's that one kid's name? I can't think of his name. Aiden McCuskey, I think his name is. He's super. Yeah, he's won the Acme's Funniest Person contest. So it's going to be a good night.
All right. And we were speaking off camera. You had talked to me or told me that you at one point facilitated was it a retreat, a psilocybin retreat?
Yeah, a few different times in Jamaica. Yeah.
I want to hear more about that, please.
Yeah, it was a really cool experience. So basically, I just threw some people that they just were comfortable with my level of experience with psychedelics. So they felt comfortable enough for me to come down and work with them and help facilitate their guests that come. So basically, the retreat is psilocybin retreat is people come for about 10 days. It's a full inclusive resort on the beach that they get to stay in. So all their food is cooked for them, and they have really nothing to do or worry about other than to focus on their experience.
Is it actually called The Retreat?
No, it's called Myco Meditations.
Okay. I knew of another one in Jamaica. I think it's called The Retreat. I didn't mean to cut.
Yeah, there's a few of them down there. Yeah.
So it's just kind of like an all-inclusive experience for people.
Yeah. So people usually is about, I think when I did them, there was maybe somewhere between 15 and 20 guests, and then there was at least 10 facilitators, if not more, if I remember correctly. And there's a nurse on staff and some therapists as well.
Okay.
And basically do 3 trips throughout the week. So, and then there's just a lot of integration work in between the tripping,
right.
And, setting an intention, and meditation and yoga and all that stuff. So they'd start with a slower, lower dose, and then they'd work their way up. And sometimes by the time we would get to the end of the week, some people were comfortable, doing upwards. It's 8 to 10, 12 grams.
Wow.
Trips. Yeah. So there was some very heavy experiences happening.
Oh
And
my
then in a
God.
group setting too, that is really an interesting thing to see. A lot of like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to call it other than mystical and like
Right.
telepathic things happening. It's stuff I've never experienced since, but really cool to see how people transform throughout those 10 days.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I think something like that just sounds so amazing because if,
Mm.
and I wonder, so I've been learning a lot more about psilocybin, obviously. I was just curious. So we have our Cuban essence, which are, the typical, so some varieties would be like penis envy,
Mhm.
hillbilly, all the fun stuff. And then I've been really learning about these exotic varieties, which I believe would be in Jamaica and, Costa Rica. And just they look much different. So, like, you've got penis envy, which looks like a mushroom, right?
Mhm.
And then these exotic mushrooms are much more lighter. They kind of look like alfalfa sprouts. I was just curious, do you remember, were you chomping
Yeah,
on?
they were using, no, I cannot. It's the B, I think they're
Oh,
called B1, or maybe I could be
oh,
wrong, but
okay. I think I know that.
yeah, it's a pretty common
I think that's a.
psilocybin mushroom, but they grew, so that retreat grew their own
Okay, cool.
mushrooms. So
Yeah, that's great.
they weren't using anything like native to Jamaica or anything like that. They were just
Gotcha.
growing. Yeah, they had basically their own farm, because they were consuming, you know, a lot. Um,
A lot.
so yeah,
Okay.
so I believe it's either the B1s or B9. I can't remember
Yeah.
exactly what
Either
the strain
way,
they were using, but
I think it's B1 and I think it's a Cuban essence, but I don't know.
mhm.
But so that's so great. And you were saying just some really kind of profound, or you don't really have a word or
Yeah,
what, just
yeah. I mean, when you get 20 people from all over the world, um, coming together to do, huge doses, interesting things are gonna happen.
right.
And I never felt unsafe. I never felt like anyone was being unsafe. I mean, there was definitely some crazy things happening as far as like, people having some very intense experiences.
Hmm.
Some people, having some not so great experience, going through
Right.
some tough things. And I mean, that's the thing with mushrooms, in my opinion, is like mushrooms is different than the other psychedelics, in my opinion, in the sense that I think mushrooms is much more of a purging experience.
Mm.
Now, that's kind of, people are like, oh, I don't want to have a bad trip. I don't want to have a bad trip. I don't want to have a bad trip. Well, I don't think mushrooms cares. And I think that what needs to come out in a mushroom trip is what needs to come out. And sometimes that's ugly. Sometimes that's what needed to be purged. It needed to be, the anger needed to be exercised. The self-hatred needed to be exercised. The sick, some people get sick, throw up a lot. And
Mm.
ancient cultures have been purging for, that's like a very common spiritual practice for
Right.
thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And, you are eating, it's a poison. I mean, it's poisoning you. That's what's happening. Um, so, and sometimes that purge that needs to happen is bliss. Sometimes you have so much love and bliss that needs to be exercised out and needs to be let out. And I think that's when people are having those kind of trips, which are wonderful. They're amazing.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
I couldn't agree
but I
more.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think.
And, I know for myself and from seeing other people experiences, like some of those hard ones are in the long run, are the best trips that I've had. The ones where
Exactly.
I'm like, feel like God
Yeah.
is, stomping on my head for 12 hours. I
Wow.
will, although it sucks in the moment,
Mm.
and you want to like, call an ambulance or whatever. But once you get through it, those are some of the experiences that I've had where I'd be feeling good for 6, 8, 12 months of having, my anxiety cut in a third,
having much more connection with the people around me and those kinds of things.
So I was going to ask you, so you've gone through this process of, you said you've had some like very enlightening experiences.
Yeah.
Are you continuing to use
I mean,
psychedelics?
Well, just to back up, my thing, I knew I needed or wanted to stop drinking. I was not just didn't like it in my life anymore and used microdosing to do so. But even at that point, it was all just recreational because I was thinking to myself, the mushrooms are making me feel happy and safe and joyful, and I was having just as much fun. So I was, kind of just recreationally using. And then over the course of, I think, a couple months, and I talk about this all the time, but it was like just one day I realized I was no longer, well, what had happened, actually, I'll tell you. I had a macro experience up in Duluth, Minnesota. I don't know why that matters, but it kind of does. And
so when you say macro, you mean like how many grams did you do?
At this stage, it was more recreational for me, so I was not really measuring much at all.
Okay.
Okay. So, but there was, a group of us, and I felt very comfortable. And what had happened, that my profound experience was during this trip, was feeling like I was connecting consciously with my grandparents and my grandpa. I must have been crying, I guess, but my grandpa was telling me, Maggie, you're not crying tears of sadness. These are tears of happiness. Like, you look at your life now and see how much happier and healthier and all that you are. And it was true. And then he said, he was telling me, you've been put here to share your story and to help as many people as you possibly can. So that's what I try to do. But I think that, from that point on, I realized, wow, this is such a magical substance. And I started to take, using much more with intention after that, because I just couldn't believe, I didn't really recognize how depressed I was months before that, because I'd never been depressed, and I don't really, so it just was like this thing that was like, evolving, and I was slowly, but it took a big trip for me to actually realize, holy cow, this has completely changed my mental health 180.
Wow.
And so, I've just been, pretty much haven't been able to stop talking about it since.
It's a common thing for sure.
Yeah. But microdosing is something I do, and I really enjoy. I'm still learning so much about how, even though I'm an experienced microdoser, but it's just every week I'm talking, and especially with this, podcast, I'm just meeting so many amazing people who are able to talk to me about microdosing, and then also using other plant medicines that work together. And then, I like to have my macro experiences, because I like to tell people that those are probably the most profound in my transformation. I think microdosing does wonders, but if you really want to get to the deep and get down to the nitty gritty and see what, why am I an anxious person, or why am I depressed, or what, you have to be open and ready to take on, whatever it is, like you were saying, what needs to come up or come out.
Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. I two things. The first, I had experience with a person who was tripping at the retreat, who I was sitting with, who had done, I think she was an older woman. She was probably in her almost 70s, maybe in her 70s. And she did, I think she did 10 grams. And
he had an incredible experience where it kind of reminds me of what you told me, where she had a lot of guilt and regret for not having grandchildren, and something that she had kind of held against her children a lot, and just had some anger about that. And then she had this trip, and she reported that she had like a full on lifetime experience with a granddaughter that she never actually had. You know, she had like this cosmic granddaughter experience for her trip, and she said it really changed the way she looked at her own life situation from then on. And as far as like knowing that consciousness is tricky, we'll say that, in the sense that the sense that the structures that we put it in from our very limited perception, it closes us off, and that really all of our experiences and needs and wants can really be met from within. And I thought that was really, really cool, and kind of reminded me of what you had just shared.
That is, oh, sorry. But
you're
just
good.
to add to that, you know, I have been starting.
Hi, Moose.
Yeah, I hope it's my one and only Moose that I know. Hi. Anyway, what was I going to say? I have been so open with things lately. So another thing I was going to tell you, now that we're getting kind of, you know, with some of these stellar cosmic experiences. But yeah, I was someone who, I had an early miscarriage, and then when I was another 23 weeks pregnant, I lost a baby boy. And so that was pretty radical, because, you know, you're over halfway along. But with some of my experiences, I feel like I have been able to connect with him, and it's been insane. Just kind of popping up. It was that same mystical experience I was talking with my grandparents. I was interacting, and you know, it just sounds so crazy, not interacting, but just feeling like he knew who I was, and he was proud of me, and things like that. It was really special.
That's cool.
And I liked, you know, it's hard. I want to be able to talk about it, but I think there's so many just naysayers, you know, but I'm just sharing. Yeah, I think that's a big piece of helping me heal from that traumatic experience, and just feeling just a little bit happier, or, you know, well-being about the situation. I now have a beautiful daughter who's my little angel. So, you know, but it's just that stuff still happened, and I still need, you know, healing from it. Right. So that's one thing that psilocybin has really taught me is, you know, everybody has traumas, huge, small, you know, but it can be anything. You can be, you know, we have traumas every day. And if you're not dealing and you're suppressing, that's when other forms of behavior start to evolve, right? So
and I do think too, like, kind of what we're dancing around is this idea of being connected, and being connected into I mean, I think what's happening is that we are part of the ultimate consciousness, right? So all the stuff that we're tapping into, it's all there. It's all there. So whether that's dead loved ones, whether it's people that are still alive, whether it's relationships that you have terminated, like, it's all still able to tap into that and tap into that place. Which I find really interesting. And then on top of all of that, you know, I think it sounds kind of harsh to people that have had major traumas in their lives, including I've had my own as well. And like, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it's a common thing that I've seen, and a common thing that I've experienced. So they call mushrooms the cosmic joker, where all of these heavy melodramatic things in our lives that we hold as like, wow, this is like something that happened to me. This is like a terrible trauma that it's affecting me and it's hurting me, right? And like that very like old egoic, like I thing. And I think what mushrooms has shown me in the past, and I've seen it with other people, is that consciousness is so much bigger than that, and that they call it cosmic joke because like I've seen people are having huge trips that are just laughing. They're just laughing at all of the horrible things that have happened to them, because in the face of pure consciousness, in the face of all of existence, it's really small.
Surely, I love how you're saying that. This exactly did happen to me, really, because especially at the time, when you're trying to conceive and have a baby, it seems like everybody else and their mother literally is. So you go to Target, you go everywhere, and you see all the moms and the kid, and it's so easy to just sit there and be like, "Oh my gosh. Why me? Why, and and it's I know everybody probably does it, but then years later, then it's literally when I'm tripping balls, sitting there kind of feeling silly about like why, you know, it it, it is what it is, and why isn't that special? Like because it's beyond, in my new frame of thinking, like it's beyond this world. So maybe I had to name my baby. His name is Baby Will. Maybe it gives me hope for that there it is just it definitely is more than here, right? So that, I mean, that's, I don't know, but it's just it helps. Yes, we're all connected. We all bad things happen all day, every day. And I think it's a medication or tool that helps you to stay grounded and just kind of let this overwhelming sense of terribleness kind of melt, because you're picturing yourself or realizing that this is life, right? And it's not just you.
And
you're a
that
little tiny.
then that you're going to be okay. Ultimately, you're going to be okay. That's always the message. Ultimately, it's like you are going to be okay. You are part of the one. You are. There's a part of you that doesn't die, that isn't born. There's a part of you that can't be hurt. That I think is what the message ultimately comes down to.
Right. Well,
do you guys mind catch it? We have a couple listener questions. Do you want
to? Yeah, of course.
Can we ask you guys? Because Maggie, this is one for you, I think, kind of. So, what do you consider a normal macro dose? Or both you. 10 sounds like a lot. Wow. What is a normal?
10 is a lot.
What is a normal microdose? 1/6.
Macro.
Well, he asked about both.
Okay. Basically. Well, I again, I'm not an expert, but I like to tell people that when you're looking to experiment or whatever with a macro dose, you would be around 3.5 grams. And then I think that we have a whole nother level, which people now coin as like a hero's dose, or, and that's when you're looking to be up in, 7, 8, 9, 10 grams. But I have this conversation a lot because so many people are interested in, having their first macro. Where should I start? I say around 3.5 grams, just from, that's what I read from Paul Stamets and my lovely psychedelic coach, Emily Silker. She would probably say the same. Any thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah, I think that, that's generally a good rule of thumb for the macrodose. 3.5 is a good place to, if you're trying to have that larger experience, is a good place to start. I think that there's just so many other variables. That's the issue, so it is really different for everybody else. And seeing like that at the psilocybin retreats, there'd be certain people who would need 2.5 grams to get to the same place that someone who's taking 8 grams is at. So it varies from person to person. For myself, I'm pretty sensitive to it. So anything, I don't really need to take much more than maybe 4 grams to have a pretty profound experience.
Gotcha.
Or there's other people that need more than that. So,
Right. I'm in the same
kind
boat.
of have to, a little bit of trial and error, you know?
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat. But I think I just wanted to touch on this retreat experience that you were there for. Perhaps the people were able to be having, upwards of 8-10 grams on their second or third trip of the week. You know what I'm saying? Because I think your levels are kind of maxed out, and
Yeah, absolutely.
but again, I don't know. But I think when you're
Yeah, absolutely.
I think when you're in a setting
Yeah.
like that too, you're like, I'm in Jamaica, damn it. Give me,
Yeah.
versus I'm in
Yeah, I don't suggest people, without having a facilitator or somebody with you, or somebody that's not already pretty experienced, to just take 10 grams. I don't suggest that at all.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think that's a very much a thought out commitment, and that's very much getting your setting right. And when you say set, that means your mind too. You really need to have your mind in the right place. Yeah.
Okay, Gabe is asking us, how often are you able to have profound mushroom trips? Well, I think again, it's all what your intentions are. So if you're hoping to have a profound experience and you are equipped with the medicine, and I don't know what else you might need to have what is a profound experience for you, I think it can happen quite often. Or when
I just mean, do you like burn it out? Like, I mean, is there any kind of thing where you go like you got to space it out every month or something like that to really get what you want out of it? I'm just curious.
I think
definitely.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think if you're having a profound experience, then you might need to take the next couple weeks to kind of reflect and say, that was so profound. You don't want to just, and I think it affects I hate trying to pretend like I know anything, but I think it affects your levels. So you do need to, take some time in between, especially, macro trips. Microdosing is a completely different story, I think, on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the big thing is integration. Are you able to integrate what you are experiencing in those experiences and grounding yourself in this reality, which ultimately needs to be done? And I think where people have issues is when they're not integrating, when they're not grounding themselves in between large trips. And let's be honest, like there are people that have put themselves in some pretty serious manic states, people that have put themselves in some places that are not great without integrating and without grounding themselves in the here and now. So yeah, I mean, it's still things like it's something that needs to be taken very seriously and needs to be, diligent about and being conscious of why you're doing it and what you're doing it for, I think.
Hey, I have a question for you. Back to the retreat. How was it? How was it determined what people were going to start with? Did they kind of start small and grow?
Yeah. So usually the first day would be anywhere from maybe a gram to 3 grams, maybe even on the left, actually. I mean, more like closer to a gram. And then we kind of were able to see how people handled it and where they were at comfort wise. And then the next trip, if they wanted to, they could go up a little higher, maybe 3, 4, and then see how that goes. And then, on the final trip, they would go about, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 12 for some people.
Gotcha. Well, that all sounds amazing. I mean, the Jamaica part too.
Yeah, it's fun. So it looks like Moose Man Shoes had a few different questions that we haven't gotten to.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. So he's asked, do you have any opinion on the best way to consume the medicine, tea versus capsules, or some other way? I've got some chocolates.
Well, I'm going to answer that because I know Moose, and Moose, I think the best way it's going to go down, well, for you, okay, you can eat them raw, but that is not very
disgusting.
Special. But if use the coffee grinder and you grind those babies up, and capsules are great because you can keep on top of your exact measurements. But if you know
Mm-hmm.
the amount that you have in a grounded, form of powder, I really like, putting it on top of some yogurt, maybe with some fruit, just get it down the hatch. But if anytime you're getting the psilocybin is getting wet or sitting in some sort of liquid or food, you're going to want to eat it um, relatively soon. We don't, because I think it loses, I don't know. That was something that Cameron had told me. So
Makes you a little
smoothies are
thicker too.
great. Smoothies are great. Sorry, Steve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was just saying, like, if you let it sit like wet, it's a better chance that you're gonna get sick. Like
Yeah.
mess your stomach up. Yeah, that's capsules is the way they do it in Jamaica. How they do it. I mean, I think that's good for large doses too. Like you said, you can keep track of what you're taking and easy to swallow and all that.
But I do
But as
have
far
to.
as the experience itself, I don't really think it makes a whole lot of difference. I mean, if tea, I have found that tea will make the whole experience go faster. They'll come up faster. The whole experience itself will be a bit more intense, but it won't last quite as long.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I've heard that or experienced that too. I think it comes on faster with tea and then doesn't last as long for whatever reason. But I was going to say, if you're going to be macroing or, having, let's say, 4 grams of capsules, I think that would be awfully difficult for you. Like you might have like a big gelatin ball in your stomach. So I would measure that out or know your amount and then, somehow put it in a smoothie or with your food or something like that. Because I do think that having too many of those capsules and then your body's got to break that stuff down, right? To get to the psilocybin. I don't know. Just a thought for me.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
thank you,
So,
Moose,
Gabe,
for your questions.
I'm dying to ask this question about what type, because so Steve was on my podcast a couple, like when he was doing this freshly, and I was convinced, so I'm divorced, and I was convinced by listening to him that actually if we had done that it truly like could have saved it, like had a good chance. It just seemed like a perfect thing that we needed. Do you see a certain dynamic between couples that you think mushrooms is particularly helpful for? Like a certain way, like, and I don't know what I'm asking. I'm just saying, like, do you see couples who do this, they come out of it really well, whereas couples who have this problem, like, hey, she cheated on me, doing all the mushrooms in the world isn't going to help this dude. You know what I mean? Like, are there any things that you've noticed just anecdotally?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We had like the retreat, it wasn't specifically for couples. That's not what it was designed for. We did have couples that came, and they would trip separately. So, but we did see a heavier connection, though. I would say that for sure, as throughout the week went. But that wasn't just people that were actually together. It was also people who were there alone and had a spouse or a significant other that, throughout the week, you would notice that they were being softer. And you could see that the levels of empathy have risen and the levels of wanting to connect with their spouse had increased. I've definitely seen that. And I've seen it in my own relationships too, where those heavier doses will definitely put me in a place of like seeing somebody else's, when you're like in a relationship, you get caught up in your own, like what you need and want from the person and they're not giving it to you and this and that and the other thing. And that stuff just I think that stuff lives in that egoic structure of your mind. That's like your conditioned mind. And when you're doing psilocybin or other psychedelics, that's pulling you out of that conditioned mind. And I think that's giving you a new perspective on the people in your life and looking at them as their own entity and not so much of like what they're doing for me. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. No, it does. And I have a question for both of you. Do both of you, because Steve, that's how I perceive you actually, as that you have softened and become more loving and open. You know, like, I mean, it's been a very positive transformation. Not that you're some asshole beforehand, but, you know, I mean, genuinely, like, it's been a very good year, like, in your body, you know, in a different way, right? And Maggie, do you feel like, I guess the question I was going to drive at is, do you think it's better for empathy or for self-love? Mushroom.
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, at first I thought it was, well, I'm an empath and I feel, I don't know. I definitely think it, for the average person, it provides, yeah, another perspective and helps them to have more empathy toward others in general. And I've really been trying to kind of dig deeper with um, the self-love aspect because yes, I think ultimately, you know, I had like self-destruction tendencies for years.
You're in good company.
Yeah, and we've talked about that, and it's like I think it for me it's just easier to just choose that, you know, the self-destruction route because otherwise you gotta change or do something else, you know, that's not comfortable. So at the, you know, in retrospect, I really do believe, yes, the self-love and self-worth. And I think it's also things that you can grow on, you know, and I'm hoping to because I think yeah, it really does slowly for me, it's really helped me really kind of like myself, which is a newer thing for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that's my biggest struggle. So liking you. No.
Oh,
no,
God.
myself. I'm joking.
Thanks.
No, I was totally joking.
You comics.
Yes, I know. And then I've got one more, if you guys don't mind getting a little hippy dippy or weird with it. But Maggie has talked a couple times about, you know, like interacting with departed loved ones, right? And that is like so heavy. So first of all, Steve, have you dealt with that? And then second of all, two-parter would be, what do you guys think that is? Do you think that it's the actual entity, or do you believe it's like your consciousness healing yourself, like kind of presenting that to yourself? And I don't want to diminish your experience with that. I'm just curious, or I hope you understand how I'm asking.
Who's going first? Steve?
Go ahead, Maggie.
Okay, well, yeah, you know, I'm just thinking back when we had Dr. Rachel Allen, and her episode will be coming along here soon. You know, I think she has more of a realistic response to that, where it's like everything is kind of like manifested in life. So if this was something, you know, if I was really hoping to, you know, connect with my grandfather, which of course I would be, you know, it's just it's a kind of this thing that I've manifested or believe that could happen or something. And when the experience was happening, it's not like, you know, it's so hard to explain. It was just like these messages and that were sent to me and that I was listening to, right? Or seeing and thing. And I didn't see him physically or anything. It's all in my head. No, this is all in my head.
Oh,
so
well,
no, there's no dead grandpa. No, it's like just this feeling that, you know, it was so weird because he was kind of on this side. And then that's my maternal grandparents. And then my dad's mother was kind of over here, but it was just in my head. So the weirdest part for me, because when I laughed, or they would laugh at me, and I could like if I was talking, my grandma said, she goes, I didn't realize how funny you were, blah blah blah, and we all laughed. It was like I could feel us laughing. I don't know about that, but it was just I have no clue. But you know, it was more or less messages and little visions, and the whole time my eyes are closed, and it's the visual, oh ouch, that you're seeing.
Okay.
I closed my eyes again. The visuals that you're seeing with your eyes closed, right?
Yeah.
So that's,
do you feel though that those messages came from them in your mind?
I mean,
I mean, and it doesn't matter. I'm just kind of
yeah.
like, curious how it feels.
It definitely felt that all of the messages were coming from them. The conversation, not a conversation again, but the messages that were coming from my grandfather were just the craziest things. I don't really want to talk about it, but he had let me know that somebody in my family might need help. And then the next day I got a phone call from said family member. I mean, just crazy
Oh,
things.
wow.
Yeah. And so that's why it's more than just, that it was just, and then again, I keep telling this part, but after my big, profound first experience, it was 2 days later that Minneapolis, it was announced that it was deprioritized psilocybin and psychedelics. So I thought that was all playing, for me, it was just, yeah, rainbows and butterflies. But yeah, I want to hear about you, Steve. Have you connected with any people? Whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like a human. It's not like a human connection as far as like, oh, this person was an ancestor or something like that. It's not that I've connected with. It's been more of this idea of like all of consciousness. And it's not so defined into an entity necessarily. It's more just tapping into this sense that you're a part of all of it. And then within all of that is, people that have passed away, people that haven't been born yet, and all kinds of, and even aliens for that matter. Alien sort of consciousness is something that I feel on a pretty regular basis when I trip. I have a very strong feeling that there is some other sort of dimension. Yeah, exactly. Gotcha. And not something that I totally understand really, or I doubt that I would ever even be able to understand it. But there is this like larger force that I feel, and mushrooms has always felt very alien to me, a very alien, almost like reptilian kind of feel to it. Where acid, on the other hand, has always felt very like space, very spacey.
Wow, opposite for me.
Digital, very digital space. Same with ketamine. Ketamine is the same thing. Feels very, very digital.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Maggie, can I ask that question about him being on stage with it?
Oh yeah, Gabe has a
because it kind of goes back to the show, and we're well over an hour here, so we should probably wrap up. But what so you're using that on stage regularly? I've taken MDMA by accident and had to perform on it once, and it was actually
that's how I always take Molly.
I was terrified, and it was great. It was like a great set, but I've never had the guts to like necessarily like try it again. How'd you like, what are you doing when you do that, and how does it change?
Well, I think earlier on it was more of like, I'm partying, I'm on the road all the time. I'm kind of getting in a very stagnant place on stage, or just drug abuse, honestly.
Yeah.
And that sort of evolved into like, whoa, hold on a second, something's actually happening here. Like some creative pathways are opening up. I'm really putting together some different things with it when I have been on these substances, and it's become like not something I want to rely on. I really do try to focus on being sober on stage for good stretches of time, but then from time to time, and then definitely on the dose show, I like to experiment because I do feel like it opens up some new, connections for me, and I was able to tie things in that I would or I hadn't thought of before, or how like, oh, this chunk kind of fits in this way, and like, oh, I really like how I said that. It just kind of makes the words come a little bit easier. And I have had, like I did a festival last year. It was like a mini Burning Man festival in Arizona, and I went on stage and took 4 full hits of Molly right when I got on stage in front of the audience, and then did an hour of comedy. And that was, sorry, my phone just rang. That was like a transcending experience. I mean, it was, I can't even really explain what that was like. And like, I had so many people coming up to me after that show that were like saying, you know, how connected they felt and how they felt like I put them under a spell for an hour, and just like kind of really cool mystical things happening. Yeah. And it's not something like, listen, I'm not going to go take 4 hits of Molly and go on at a comedy club. That's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's set and setting is very important in that way. But yeah, I think that something's happening. Something's happening when the audience is in a psychedelic state and the performers in a psychedelic state. And if people can keep their minds open enough and let go of their kind of misconceptions of what things have to be, some really cool, magical things can happen.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm so appreciative of you for putting this out there to the people, because I think it's so true, you know? I mean, especially for those who choose not to consume alcohol, it's another option for, you know, someone to feel like they can enjoy themselves and be a part of, and I'm not, you know, do you serve alcohol at your shows? Not that that matters, but I'm sure you do, right? Or...
I mean, it depends on the venue.
Oh, okay.
Like at Sisyphus, you know, it's a brewery, so I'm sure they'll be serving beer for sure. But yeah, I mean, like I know Gabe has experienced this as well. It's like, this is kind of what I tell people who are, you know, like, oh my God, you're gonna have people on psychedelics at your show? That's gonna be insane. It's like, gotcha. Not nearly as insane as making everyone drink multiple drinks. Try to sit through a comedy show and then drive home in their car. Like, it's just, I don't understand. Like, there's such a blind spot when people talk about these sort of things where they're like, oh God, it's so dangerous. Like, every club is just over serving everyone. You can, like, they'll if you buy 10 drinks, they'll give you 10 drinks. Yeah. And like, that's way more dangerous and disruptive and disconnecting than anyone ever showing up on a gram of mushrooms. You know what I'm saying?
Couldn't agree more. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm getting the sign from Gabe. We're going to wrap up here. And so March 9th.
Didn't have to make that public, but
yeah. Sisyphus Brewery.
March 9th. Sisyphus Brewery. It's in Minneapolis. If that looks like Gabe's got it on there, it's sisyphusbrewing.com. Yeah, the show starts at 8. I mean, but the venue's open all day. So if you want to come down, we're gonna have the DJ playing. I believe there's gonna be Big Psych Minneapolis.
Yeah,
is gonna be down there. Somebody that Gabe has helped us connect with. They're gonna have a booth down there. And yeah, like we're gonna be hanging out. So come down, have some fun.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think Maggie said she was gonna come.
I'm gonna come.
Yeah.
I gotta get my booth. I gotta get my booth together.
It's a great comedy room too. It's a great room.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, yeah, it really is.
I'm excited, and I really appreciate you and your time. And it was a little bit of a scramble today, so thanks, viewers, for putting up with us. But I appreciate you. I can't wait. And good luck with the show, Feb 22 in Seattle.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, Steve. Okay. Later.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It was a fun one. Please check out Sisyphus Brewery, and so you can learn more about the show, The Dose, March 9th. Doors open at 7. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers, mates.
MBC. No relation to NBC.